And I told y'all earlier I was gonna bring somebody new in the G Unit. I might have a new sign and I might not. The man Jim Jones right here. Pass me the ball.
I respect Gina G Unit is one of the few movements that I do respect in this game and things like that.
But now you gotta get violated.
Yeah, super violated. Super duper.
I could have been way more financially responsible than I was. I ain't got $20 million to show for it, but I definitely spent it on the land and shit like that.
Run from the spirit of repossession.
Lawbreeze and Gentlegrams, Harlem's headline hero has hearsay swaying him to zero. From Dipset dominance to drama and decay, from swag to surveillance, this might be Jim's darkest day. In the early 2000s, the rapper reigned supreme along with 50 Cent, who's now hitting him with building rent and eviction checks, checking his self-esteem. Security footage of a capo kicking doors and closing dreams. And see, when style met street, Jim had the world watching. Now screens show struggles and potential pale pockets. So your only job is make the like and subscribe buttons rocket while we dox and dissect the details on this daunting docket.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.
50 Cent has been known to make an absolute fool out of anyone he does not get along with. I mean, have you ever hated someone so hard you got Netflix to make a 4-part series tearing that man down? We might forget that 50 Cent pushed the Rick Ross beef that he had so far to the point where he was actually sued by the mother of Rick Ross's children, and his latest victim, Jim Jones, might be 50 Cent's greatest digital victim yet. But it's an interesting twist because a lot of the ammo that 50 Cent has on Jim Jones is Jim Jones really putting these issues onto himself. I mean, when you've made enemies out of both 50 Cent and Pusha T, you know you're probably backed into a dangerous corner.
Crush you to pieces, I hum a breath of it. I will close your heaven for the hell of it.
And it was just a few years ago when Pusha T reminded the world that Jim Jones was running from the spirit of repossession, yes.
Run from the spirit of repossession. Too much enamel covers your necklace.
It was reported in 2019 that Jim Jones's New Jersey mansion foreclosed and auctioned off for $100 after he defaulted on his $680,000 mortgage. Recently, Jim Jones has also been in the news for claiming that he made Kid Cudi's career. Now, it wasn't Kanye West, it was Jim Jones for hopping on a remix to a Kid Cudi track.
Man, Kid Cudi was a nobody. You wanna know how Kid Cudi got born? I'm like, show me their videos. He showed me a video. Ended up being a Kid Cudi video. And I was like, give me the record and I'll let you shoot me a video. They got me the record. I did the record. They shot the video.
How the they get on radio like that?
I'm trying to tell you, I put it on YouTube. Somebody at Hot 97 ripped it off of YouTube and started playing it at Hot 97.
Did he give you a check?
Never. When he got his deal, they took me off the record.
And while it just seemed like Jim Jones was on the cusp of a comeback, leading a successful venture with his rapper friends Mano, Fabulous, and Dave East with their podcast Let's Rap About It, it's looking like 50 Cent might be coming to shut the entire thing down, or maybe even buy the entire podcast from them.
Huh?
Yes, this is what we're working with here today. But it wasn't always like this, and I think that Jim Jones deserves a little respect on his name because the image he portrays today and the trouble he's gotten himself into does not reflect the contributions that he's made to hip-hop in the past. See, a lot of the fashion and aesthetic that you see today within hip-hop derives from Jim Jones and the Diplomats in the mid-2000s. Everything from the skeleton imagery on the clothing, the studded belts, that whole rock star aesthetic with the leather, the bandanas, the tighter jeans, the heavy accessories. Jim Jones played a big part in bringing that look to the forefront. In fact, he credits himself for the big stylistic change that Lil Wayne took when he entered his Best Rapper Alive era, and I don't think many people would contest that. He was even the first rapper to go viral wearing chrome hearts way before Soulja Boy.
But I don't know if Lil Wayne bit my style, but he definitely complimented my style. You know what I mean?
Okay.
We family, that's my boy, that's the homie.
And I know Wayne, he started dressing like that.
Yeah, we gave it to Wayne. He came to Dipset school, was with us for a whole summer. He was with Wells for a whole summer. And naturally, his whole style changed that summer. Wayne is the blood, that's our brother. He's one of the few artists in this game that we got a lot of love for. And him and Joel's are like twins. They did a lot together coming up.
So where did it all go wrong with Jim Jones? How did he go from breaking through doors in culture and fashion to kicking down doors of his podcast studio so that he didn't have to record with a winter jacket and gloves on?
Spicy.
Well, Joseph Jones II was born in July of 1976. Yes, he is approaching the ripe age of 50 years old. Keep that in mind when we review all of his recent behavior. Jim Jones was raised in the 1199 Plaza, an apartment complex on the border of East Harlem and the Upper East Side, raised primarily by his mother and his grandmother. He was actually neighbors with Dame Dash and met him around the age of 6. Dame was around the age of 11, and Jim grew up in rough environments, which, as he puts it, taught him how to fight at an early age. His grandmother gave him the nickname Jomo, which stood for Joy of Missing Out, and he ends up moving into his grandmother's place in Taft Houses. And somewhere around this time, he meets Freaky Zeke, who is cousins with Cameron. They were selling candy bars at school to buy themselves sneakers and clothing.
Me and Jim in high school, we used to get to school early. We used to run up in the candy store. I used to buy Oreos, cupcakes, bonbons, whatever, cookies. We went to Catholic school, so we had to wear a blazer. So we used to put all that stuff in our sleeves, in our inside pocket, in our regular pocket, and sometimes in our book bag, because we had second period lunch. So fifth period come around, they were starving. So we, in Spanish class, we like, oh, we got Oreos. We sold that the whole week. That's how we used to get our sneaker game on.
And Jim had actually ended up graduating high school a year early and briefly worked at a law firm through a program that gave inner city kids part-time jobs. After a couple months, he quits. And around this time, he becomes friends with Cameron, who at the time was trying to pursue a career in basketball, but was also beginning to make music with some of his friends, including Bloodshed and Murder Mace, who you guys obviously know as Mace. Now, Cameron appeared on Big L's 1995 album, Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous, and he even forms a rap group with Big L and Mace.
Killing Kid Cameron, surviving in the Amazon. I leave you dead and froze with all kinds of amazing flow.
Jim isn't rapping at the time, but in 1995, Jim's grandmother passes away, and while not wanting to be alone, he invites Cameron, Bloodshed, and Mace to constantly hang out at his apartment. And it's there where Mace would teach Jim Jones how to rap. By 1996, Mace signs to Bad Boy Records, and he stays closely connected to Jim Jones and Cameron. He actually took Cameron to Biggie's house to try and get him signed to Biggie. And Biggie had planned to sign Cam to a new label he was forming, but unfortunately, he passed away just a couple months later.
A lot of people want to know, and they always ask me this, when you had your record deal, why did you take me to Biggie Smalls and not Bad Boy?
Man, it's almost going to bring me to tears to say this. Being that I saw you as such a good friend, I want to put you with somebody I knew with.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
Now, Cam and Jim's friend Bloodshed had also lost his life in a car crash in 1997, and this made Jim Jones and Cameron grow even closer. Mace around this time becomes a superstar. Cam and Jim are reported to have gone on the road with him. And while rapping is not at the top of mind for Jim, Cameron is desperately trying to get his big break as a rapper. Jim and Cam end up going to the Lox's video set for the song Always Love Big Papa, and it's there where they get in contact with Lance Rivera, who was Biggie's former business partner. He was also the co-founder of the record label Undies Recordings, and he ends up signing Cameron to the label, which is where Cam had released his first 2 albums.
Mace got his record deal. He was on fire. I was going with him everywhere. He didn't want me to go to Bad Boy. He took me to Biggie Smalls' house. Biggie had his own label. He put on beats, and I just rapped for like 40 minutes for him straight. And he was like, cut the beat off, what you want? I'm going to call my man Lance and get it. But he ended up dying during that process. They were shooting the Rest in Peace video for Biggie in Harlem, and his partner that he called, named Lance Rivera, was there, and Jacob York. And I'm like, yo, I'm the guy Biggie wanted to sign. They had just did a new deal with Sony, and they was like, we'll give you the record deal because that's what Biggie wanted.
Throughout this time, Jim Jones is close to Cameron. He appears on Cameron's debut album Confessions of Fire on the song Me, My Moms, and Jimmy. And Mace is also featured on the breakout single from this project, Horse and Carriage. However, this is when issues started arising because Cameron had reportedly asked Mace to be in the music video, and Mace had allegedly demanded $50,000 to make the appearance. Cameron thought this fee was unacceptable, so instead, he brought in a body double to take Mace's place in the video.
Hey, yo, I love when cats think they're bigger than a sumo. That's when I hit them with a little Puerto Rican judo.
This sparked issues between Cameron and Mace, and of course Mace announces his retirement the next year in 1999. Cameron releases his second album, SDE, on Sony and Epic Records, but demands to be released from the label, and that's when they reconnect with both Cam and Jim's childhood acquaintance, Dame Dash. Cam signs a reported $4.5 million record deal with Rockefeller Records in 2001 and drops his third and most successful album to date with Come Home With Me.
What was the first step to getting signed to The Rock? How did it go down?
Dame Dash, he been managing me for like a year and a half. That's my man. We grew up together and everything. When everything wasn't working out at Epic, we decided to go over to The Rock. Like, we gotta get out this deal. Epic is just screwing us up. They do real good R&B, but they didn't know how to market me. So we thought, knowing that I knew Dame would be better over there. A lot of problems at the last label, like creatively. Like, I wanted to do a certain type of music. They didn't like the music I wanted to do. Whereas at Rockefeller, they let you do what you want. Like, that's on you. If you flop, you flop. If it pop, it pop.
Jim is all over the album, Freaky Zeke's on the album, and this is where they bring Juelz Santana in the picture. The Diplomats group had already been formed by around 1997, but it was during this era in around 2002, between the success of Cam'ron's Come Home With Me album and the slew of mixtapes that the Diplomats began releasing, with Juelz, Jim, and of course Cam'ron being the frontrunners of the group. This is when they really started taking off, and of course Jim was a core member. By 2003, you get the massive Diplomats project, Diplomatic Immunity. Jim Jones was actually directing the early Dipset music videos, and Cam'ron had allegedly wrote some of Jim's earlier rhymes, because again, Jim was initially more focused on being in film. But it's through the success that the Diplomats were receiving that Jim starts to pursue his own solo career. And he allegedly wanted a $1 million deal, but Dame Dash had laughed in his face, saying that Jim wasn't good enough at the time. Jim ends up signing an independent deal with Kosh Records, and through the label and Diplomat Records, he releases his debut album, On My Way to Church. The album sparks some minor success with singles like Certified Gangsters, and in that year, Jim Jones and Cam'ron would get into a heated argument with Mase on Hot 97, with Jim calling out Mase for leaving Harlem and not being safe to come back. So as you can see, Jim Jones has been talking crazy for, 20 plus years at this point. But from a career standpoint, this actually kind of worked in Jim's favor. The Diplomats were at the forefront of East Coast hip hop. They blended Harlem street culture with flashy rock star inspired fashion. And there was a rebellious but also kind of colorful expression and aesthetic to everything they did. This is when Lil Wayne comes in the picture. He starts collaborating with Juelz Santana very heavily. And like Jim had said, everything from the fashion to the blood gang affiliation to the way Wayne was rapping, it was all taken from a blueprint that the Diplomats had created. It's around the same time that Rockefeller breaks apart, Jay-Z and Dame Dash split, and this is when Jim Jones's run really started. He dropped 2 back-to-back successful albums, Harlem, Diary of a Summer in 2005, and then Hustlers Pome in November of 2006. And this is when a lot of chaos begins to ensue. There's the whole conflict between Dipset and Rockefeller. Freaky Zeke gets locked up for running an ecstasy ring allegedly for a good portion of Jim Jones's biggest run. Jim starts his own collective, Bird Gang Records, tries to sign Max B to Diplomats. Cam'ron rejects the idea. Jim Jones ends up signing Max B to Bird Gang Records, and Max B allegedly wrote Jim Jones's biggest hit, We Fly High. Now, I was like a 10-year-old in Canada at the time, but I remember hearing this song all over radio. This was huge. And it's around this time where the collapse of Dipset begins to ensue, because the 2 founding members, Jim Jones and Cam'ron, they start going at it. At the height of Jim's career, Cam'ron decides to take a 3-year hiatus from music in around 2007 after his mother had suffered 3 strokes, which left her paralyzed on her left side. About a year before this, bootleg t-shirts began being sold with the name Tricky Ricky being printed on them, and it was directed at Jim Jones for his relationship with Chrissy Lampkin, who he had allegedly been showering with gifts very early on in their relationship. And during a 2017 Instagram Live, Cam'ron had actually admitted to being the mastermind behind producing these shirts. He admitted he was wrong for this. He was just confused because him and Jim had been friends for years, and all of a sudden he starts dating this girl and quickly starts spending tons of money on her. But Cam says after this, everything went downhill.
Because he'll say, I'd rather say whatever, he'll say, this is what I did, and I'm not going to lie, I was dead wrong for this. And this is where the whole shit collapsed at. This is where everything went all the way downhill. I'm being totally honest. Jim met Chrissy. When he met Chrissy, he been liking Chrissy his whole life. He loved Chrissy, you know what I'm saying? But he just started messing with her. We was just kind of new to how the millions of dollars of money or whatever. So Jim just meet Chrissy and he started messing with her. And he's buying her bags or buying her shoes like the first 2-3 weeks he met her or whatever. So I was like, yo, you tricking, man. What is you doing? You tricking, you bugging. This is molestation. I'm being totally honest in that. If I could do it over, I swear to God, I would do it all the way over because I see how their relationship grow and I see they're still together. And I think that's real dope shit. I think that shit's hot. I didn't know it would grow to be that, but I'm thinking from a mindset, this my man. Last month we was fucking bitches, now this nigga is by, what's the name? So I didn't know what time it is. So what I did was I made these t-shirts and it said, Tricky Ricky, AKA Jim Jones is a trick. And on the back of the shirt, we had mad niggas in jail. Snabs was in jail. My man Chanel, from Hufford T, for Young Handsome, he's in jail. We had a lot of niggas in jail at the time. And I was sending them money. So I made the shirt that said Jim Jones, Tricky Ricky. And he not looking out for the now niggas in jail. And on the back of the shirt, at all our niggas in jail, and I called him a trick. But I was looking at it like that. I look at that. Would grow to be what it was. But those shirts hurt. I had niggas wear the shirt in the studio because we was cool. Niggas wearing the shirt, everybody was. It was just a joke. I didn't know. He took that shit serious, B. He took it serious. And to this day, I'll be manning up. I apologize about doing that. I really do. I apologize about that. But it's not from the perspective of that's my man. We some bitches together last week, 2 weeks ago, a month ago. I didn't know it was like that. After I did that shirt, though, everything was damn hell.
Now remember, it was after this that Cameron had stepped away from music, but Jim is at the height of his career. So Jim starts dissing Cameron, saying that he's not being a good leader. Cameron disses Jim back, accusing him of disloyalty and trying to take control of Dipset. And Chrissy had even appeared on Love and Hip Hop, openly criticizing Cameron, saying that he wasn't supportive of Jim Jones. The irony in all that is that Cameron at this time starts also beefing with 50 Cent, and Jim Jones starts working with 50 and G-Unit, which is all ironic now, but here you have Dipset, who had quickly rose in the mid-2000s, but they already started big issues with Mace, then Jay-Z, then you get the internal conflicts, and now Cameron is here beefing 50.
Now, I told y'all earlier I was going to bring somebody new in the G-Unit. I might have a new sign and I might not.
You got nice hair.
The man Jim Jones right here. Bought you the biggest record of last year, right?
Oh yeah, we balling. We still balling.
Well, we got to do that one time. Tell me how to show you how you do it. You got to pass me the ball for us. How we got to do that? That was the ball, baby. You know what I mean?
I respect Gina G-Unit is one of the few movements that I do respect in this game and things like that. I got a new deal pending. I don't want to...
Jim ends up dropping a couple big mixtapes in the late 2000s and spawns another massive hit with Pop Champagne featuring Ron Browns. Now, if you guys remember this time, T-Pain was at the top of the game, and Ron Browns had quickly snuck in along with Roscoe Dash, who was down in Atlanta, I believe, and they both heavily incorporated that similar use of auto-tune that T-Pain had pretty much made famous. New York hip-hop was kind of at this weird state by this point. Some of the biggest hits from New York were coming from Ron Browns in the late 2000s, Pop Champagne, Jumping Out the Window, splashed in auto-tune, and I believe, while everyone kind of says Jay-Z was targeting T-Pain with the death of autotune, I think it was more so aimed at acts like Ron Browns or even Jim Jones kind of standing beside him, because those autotune drenched club hits, they didn't really represent the core Dipset sound or New York as a whole. And at that point it was kind of like, all right, everyone and their mother is using autotune, right? Just to get a quick cheap hit. A-Rap Money around that time too. Weird times.
Jumping out the window with this window.
Now, it would also take Jim Jones a couple years to follow up the success he had with We Fly High and his 2006 album, because he only released another official studio album 3 years later in 2009. Pray for Rain, and this album didn't really have much success aside from that Pop Champagne single. Like, the album only sold 42,000 copies first week, debuted at number 9. This was almost as bad as Jim Jones's first album when he was still, relatively unknown. And with that, you get the start of reality TV era Jim Jones. See, again, Jim Jones initially had aspirations of delving into a career within film. And by 2011, he gets his big break on Love and Hip Hop with his significant other, Chrissy. And they even get their own spin-off, Chrissy and Mr. Jones.
My love for Chrissy is unconditional. I mean, I don't know how much more it can grow. I'm about to blow up. It's grown so much.
Huh?
This was in 2012, it ran for 2 seasons. Jim even continues making his mark on the fashion game, teaming up with his former business partner Dame Dash to release what should definitely be considered a very innovative brand, Vamp Life Clothing, in 2014. I mean, guys, if you follow, Playboi Carti's career or his whole aesthetic, like, it came from this. Recently, Soulja Boy's been going viral online for calling himself a vampire over a distorted beat in like 2010. People saying that, you know, he was the first rapper to call himself a vampire and rap over, you know, distortion before Playboi Carti made it popular. But it was this aesthetic, the vamp life lingo, the clothing, it all came from Jim Jones. And at the same time, alongside that, Playboi Carti's also very inspired by Lil Wayne's fashion style from like 2007. And that was also heavily inspired by Jim Jones and the Diplomats. So, you know, we got to give the guy credit where credit is due. But with that, it would be here where we'd see the slow decay of Jim Jones's career in music. Projects were dropping, but they were getting no buzz. And I'm not going to go into much of the detail about the street-related drama that Jim Jones was involved in, but I did think it was interesting that when Tekashi 6ix9ine had been arrested on federal RICO and firearms charges, he famously snitched on every 9 Trey Bloods member involved in the trial. And of course, Tekashi was, you know, being used by the collective as kind of like a golden goose, a means for, you know, money. And you guys probably know that, you know, he really made the 9 Trey Bloods infamous in internet culture, right? The whole Treyway thing. Well, Jim Jones even found himself implicated in that because he was caught on a wiretap phone call that was played in court where he was saying that they need to super violate someone.
That's cool, but now you gotta get violated.
Yeah, super violated. Super duper. So ain't too much he can really do unless he gonna run around with 100 armed securities all day. You know what I'm saying? He gonna get shot at pay.
He ain't getting enough money for that.
That's a fact. And he just canceled all his shows.
And he ain't a gang member no more.
Nah, he ain't nothing.
That's what Shotty needs to make sure he do.
Nah, we
tell that nigga that he's not a gang member no more. He kicked out the whip. He was never a gang member. Nigga, Shotty need to expose him. Like,
nah.
So that was just an interesting detour, and it was kind of like the most spotlight Jim Jones had received on him in a while when this went down in 2018. But he would receive a bigger spotlight than he had seen in years when he actually got the Diplomats to briefly reunite for a versus battle between them and the Lox in 2021. And the irony is that it was believed that Cameron had actually got his record deal by being at a Lox video shoot, so kind of brings everything full circle. Jim had allegedly been begging Cam to do the verses, and they ended up being really unprepared and definitely taking the loss to the Lox. Now, about a year after this in 2022, Jim Jones forms the Lobby Boys with rapper Mano. The name was inspired by the building lobbies that they were raised in, the apartment complexes. Mano and Jim had their own issues earlier on, but they ended up reconciling, and Cameron and Mace had also reconciled around this time to start their podcast in January of 2023. About a year after starting it, they actually get 50 Cent on the show, and that's when 50 and Cam start joking about how Jim Jones switched sides on the Diplomats in 2007 to start affiliating with 50 and G-Unit.
For the younger audience, we had like a rap battle thing at one time. And 50, what you did, so we was having interior problems at Dipset. Nobody knew about this. Nobody knew that we was like not on the same page. Right. So when me and you were battling during our music thing, you got members of Dipset to come to your show. I'm like, so I'm sitting there like,
that was
it's just kind of smart, because I wouldn't have thought about reaching out to Yayo or Lloyd Banks. I'm like, niggas going public with this?
I'm like, yo.
What was your thought process behind saying, yo, you know what? The songs. What was how this work? How did it go?
Jimmy was not a rapper then.
Right.
He was your man, like on the side, like in the side, just he was not a rapper at all.
Right.
So when Ballin' took place, and I'm looking and I'm going, oh, he having a moment. That's the Lloyd Banks. It's Lloyd Banks thing. Mm-hmm. He wanted that. He was watching them be that, like Mace be that, and Cam be that, and looked at, and it was finally. He had one. Mm-hmm. And I just looked, and I knew, I just took the shot, Murder, to see, because I wasn't sure he was going to go for it. Mm-hmm. But I was like, we like Jimmy better than you anyway, Cam. Then you got to watch and see how he responds. And then, when you see, he like, Oh shit, he really like that. Give me this. Get me Jimmy. Yeah, tell him we want you at the show, Jimmy. That was one of those things I just threw it out and see what. And then when he bit to it because it was like he was having a moment that not sure that was going to ever happen again.
This causes Jim to respond. Him and Cameron go back and forth. 50 Cent's kind of at the center of it. And of course, now we get to the modern day when Jim Jones and Mano end up linking up for their own podcast with Dave East and Fabulous called Let's Rap About It. Oh, so before that, I forgot to mention. Remember how in around 2006, they start printing these Tricky Ricky t-shirts, which is a jab at Jim Jones for spending egregious amounts of money, right? Yeah, well, by like 2024, Jim himself admits that at the height of his career in that era, he was spending insane amounts, racking up $120,000 a month credit card bills, probably blowing around $20 million in total. So it looks like Cameron might have had a point with those shirts.
You said you spent $20 million at the time of ball. You ran through $20 million.
Yeah.
Where did you spend the $20 million?
Just spending and living. Like, my credit card sometimes like $120,000 a month. You heard? That ain't got nothing to do with the everyday expenses. So, we deal with a lot of cash and stuff like that. So
I know it was a lot of PJ. You PJ King at one time.
If you jumping on a jet all these times and your jet bill sometime might be $500,000 a month. I ain't got $20 million to show for it, but I definitely spent it on the land and shit like that. I could have been way more financially responsible than I was.
And now because of all this egregious spending, see, Jim Jones and his girlfriend Chrissy, they had bought a house together in 2006. But by the late 2010s, the money starts drying up from the rap career, and they actually allegedly stopped making mortgage payments on that mansion that they had bought. The bank had sued them in 2017 for non-payment, and they defaulted on that mortgage, with the house eventually being sold in a sheriff's auction for just $100. And after this happens, Jim Jones is like heavy on radio, podcasts, just yapping a lot, right? This is before he starts a podcast of his own, and in around 2023, he had actually taken a little jab at Pusha T when he questioned why Pusha T was on a lot of people's top 50 rappers of all time lists. Remember, this was at a time when those conversations were going viral online, who were the best 50 rappers of all time. A lot of people had Pusha in their list, but Jim Jones had said, what has he done that puts him in the greatest rappers of all time besides talk about coke? And he probably didn't even do it himself. He's nice, he could rap, but what has he actually done? Now, I think Jim has done a lot, but don't forget, Jim had also said that he is more lit in 2026 than Nas is, right? So I don't know how much validity you want to add to his opinions on these type of conversations, but Pusha T had actually responded in the infamous record Chains and Whips, talking to Jim Jones directly. I mean, I'm going to try to play you guys a clip of Pusha T performing this song, but he's staring right at the camera, like letting you know he's talking directly to Jimmy over here, all right? So he raps on that record saying,
Run from the spirit of repossession.
Too much enamel covers your necklace. I buy B's, you buy him sections.
You buy watches, I buy collections.
Starting this verse right off the rip, referencing the fact that Jim Jones's house got repossessed and he's wearing fake jewelry. And while he's buying a singular watch, Pusha T's buying entire collections. And at the same time, like Jim Jones, he's still kind of trying to act like he's a young guy, right? He's still in the club. He's buying sections for these girls. Like he's 50 years old, still in the club, right? And Pusha T continues, misery's fueling your regression. Jealousy's turned into obsession. Reality TV is mud wrestling. Some sign checks I know better than. And of course, we know Jim Jones had a lengthy career with his significant other on Love and Hip Hop, right? On reality TV. Pusha T saying, there's no check big enough that could get him on reality TV. And at the same time, Jim Jones here is just bitter and miserable and jealous. And that's what's getting him to get on these podcasts talking crap, right? And he continues saying, you're questioning, this late in the game for both these guys who have had lengthy careers, who have inspired, the next generation. You'd think that there'd be respect amongst respective legends, right? He raps, crush you to pieces, I'll hum a breath of it.
I will close your heaven for the hell of it.
You'd think there'd be valor amongst veterans. I'm watching your fame escape relevance. We're all in the room, but here's the elephant. You're chasing a feature out of your element and those lab diamonds under inspection. Of course, Jim at the time holding on to the little bit of fame that he still had, dissing Pusha T to try and, get that cosign or that feature from Drake, begging Cameron to do the verses. He's chasing a feature or a cosign out of his element, out of his status at this point. Also with diamonds that would fail an inspection test, right? Because if your house is repossessed, odds are you're not wearing, you know, a house on your neck. And the best part here, the best bar, is where he says the question marks block your blessings. See, that's a slick double entendre, because obviously he's saying that, you know, all of these stains that you're throwing on your legacy, all the crap you're talking, the jealousy that you're mustering up, the misery that's fueling your regression, it's these things that are actually blocking you from being truly blessed. But at the same time, if you guys ever played Super Mario Bros, then you know when Mario hits the blocks that have those question marks on them, there's a little item that pops out of those blocks that if Mario ends up eating them, he ends up leveling up and growing bigger, right? So him saying here, the question marks block your blessings. He's talking about the literal blocks that help you level up in the game, but he's also talking about, you know, Jim Jones holding himself back, holding his career back by all of the negative things that Pusha T had pointed out in this verse. So, you know, what I find interesting is that while all these guys are dissing each other on podcasts or whatever the case is, Pusha T is the only rapper approaching 50 years old that's still delivering like sharp, poignant, layered verses to respond to these guys who are talking down on him, right? So I really hope that puts it into perspective, especially when we look at, you know, the whole back and forth between Jim and 50. Like, the only person that Jim went at that actually took it to the booth and gave an impeccable response in the form of a verse back was Pusha T. And Fabulous too. I gotta give Fabulous credit on that too. Shout out to Loso. But Fab, he was dissing 50 Cent. Why was he dissing 50 Cent? Because 50 Cent has been going on a crazy campaign against this Let's Rap About It podcast that, again, was formed earlier in 2025 by Mano, Dave East, Fabulous, and Jim Jones himself. Now, make no mistake, 50 Cent has been clowning Jim Jones, guys, for ages at this point. Him and Cameron on the podcast a few years ago, clowning Jim for switching up, you know, at the height of the Diplomats G-Unit popularity in the mid-2000s, but also when there was tensions there, right? But 50 has been going at Jim for separate issues as well. I mean, Jim, to put into perspective how poor his rapping career had gone, he dropped an album last year and 50 Cent had actually did the math on how little that album had generated in revenue, and he sent the numbers to Cameron and then posted it onto Instagram. $3,500, sends it to Cameron and then captions the post saying, "Oh no, Jomo, what now? All that for $5. Say sorry to Cameron, fool. LOL." And remember, Jomo, that's the nickname that his grandmother had given Jim Jones. Jim had also gotten into a little scuffle at an airport, and 50 Cent had responded to the whole issue, of course, clowning Jim, posting a picture of an old man boxing with the caption saying, "Yo, the old man from the airport said he's gonna see you, Jimmy. Stop thinking stuff is sweet." But now, the real root of this issue and how we got to the point where 50 Cent may literally buy Jim Jones's podcast and the studio that they record in is basically, if we rewind the clocks back to around holiday season when 50 Cent had dropped his holiday special, The Reckoning, a documentary 4 parts about Sean Diddy Combs, documenting on Netflix for the world to see every horrible allegation and crime and whatever that Diddy had committed, right? Now, a lot of the guys on the Let's Rap About It podcast, they had some sort of connection to Diddy at one point or another, and they got on their show to react to the documentary, more so questioning, like, if you are not getting along with this guy, is it morally right for you to basically make a whole live public viewing where you're crapping on him and exposing all of these things that maybe the public didn't know, or painting a narrative that may not even be true? This is what they had to say.
Is it acceptable for someone to create a documentary about you without your approval? How would you feel if it happened to you?
It's like definitely not acceptable. It's facetious and petty.
Right. It's like somebody putting out your sex tape.
Yeah, if you want to make, yeah, exactly.
It's like
without your permission,
and you're not an actual porno star.
And they doing
the lighting wasn't good or nothing.
Yeah, they're trying to make you just look bad.
What?
Oh, they caught me on a bad day.
Right.
I wasn't even on my shit. This thing caught a weak one. Damn.
You see that the lighting is dark?
Damn.
You see that the fucking lighting is dark?
Got me looking small
you
out
still
here.
put this on the internet?
Word up.
I ain't gonna front. I think, if they saluting you.
First of all, they want somebody doing a documentary about you. You wanted to be a dope documentary.
Yeah, it gotta be dope.
Showing who you are, what you've done,
Put out no bullshit
everything
on
you've
me.
accomplished. Like, a documentary is a big thing. Like, you don't want nobody doing a documentary about some like trying to just make your whole character look weak. Like, that's petty behavior.
And I want to know the company that did it so we could talk, you know what I mean? Because if it's on me, I need, you know what I mean?
I don't understand why that's like legal to do though. I don't think like without anybody, like if you're doing a documentary, if I'm doing a documentary on you, why wouldn't you want the person involved to interact?
It's not really a documentary, it's more like a mockumentary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It seemed like when you don't use the person, it's more like you're against them anyway.
Right.
So
When you
that's
doing
why I
shit
don't
like
think
that,
it should be.
how can it even be called a documentary?
You can do something with it.
Like, why is it called a documentary when it's not?
It's still a doc. You know, it's not an autobiography, but it's a documentary because once you become a public person,
Bro, none of them Pablo Escobar documentaries I watched, none of them people knew him. They all
you go.
people, they
That's what I'm
just,
saying.
You get what I mean? Like you can
once you become, if you're a
that
public person,
figure,
you're in the
they can just
news.
do it.
You can be Google.
So do you think that it's wrong or not?
I
I'm
think
not
it's
with it.
wrong. I'm not with it either. I think that.
I'm not with it.
Do we
I
all
think you
agree that
should.
it's wrong? Thumbs down for that
I don't
shit?
want nobody putting out my sex tape.
You're right.
I mean, if they slandering you or they violating, I think it's wrong.
We're talking about sex tapes with this nigga. This
if they saluting you, it come with who you became.
Saluting you is different.
You know what I mean, yeah.
Would you rather raise a bully or your child to be?
And of course, 50 Cent wouldn't hear this without a fight, right? So first, he posts a picture of the podcast on his Instagram saying, "These guys are squatters. They owe $250,000 for the space that they're filming their podcast. These bums are trying to win Best Dressed Award and can't pay their bills." Because, of course, we know Mano and Akademiks also had a beef when the podcast first started because Akademiks was clowning the outfits they were wearing on the show. And, of course, again, we reviewed the history of Jim Jones's influence on fashion, so I think they could dress how they want to dress. But for 50 to say that they owe $250,000 to a podcast studio, it makes no sense, right? Like, just a little bit of advice for any of you guys that want to start a podcast, right? Like, I'm here with a mic that costed $400. I started this thing on my iPhone, right? Like, I was recording into my iPhone at first. If you want to start a podcast, all you need is a budget of, I would say at the most, like $10,000, and that could probably get you 10 episodes. And we're talking high budget here. We're talking about, renting out a studio that comes with cameras, comes with a crew who's going to manage all the lighting, all the sound, the engineering, the editing, all that stuff. Each episode should not cost you more than like $1,000.
Spicy.
There's no fancy edits here. They're using literally the same microphone I have, right? Like, there's nothing crazy here. Plus, if their podcast is only generating like 150,000 views on average per episode on YouTube, if you count in sponsors and the ad money, like, each episode is not making more than, I would say at the very high end, like $5,000 to maybe $10,000 on the very high end if we're being generous. I could tell you YouTube will pay you around like $8 to $10 for every 1,000 views that you get, and that's if you're doing like super long videos, right? That's just off the ad money. So if they're doing around like, even let's say 200,000 views per episode, that's only around $2,000 in ad money from the episodes. And then let's say they got a sponsor that gives them at the high end like $8,000 an episode, and that's really being generous. I mean, I personally have never gotten paid anywhere close to that amount from a sponsor, so I'm being generous here and saying that they're making around $10,000 an episode. I don't even think they are. Then you got to imagine that's split between 4 people. How they somehow amassed a $250,000 debt to the podcast studio that they're using, that makes completely no sense to me. But we know Jim has had his money issues, and 50 here is basically saying they're all broke, right? And then he points aim directly at Jim Jones, saying on Instagram, "I understand Diddy was your hero. Stay down with him. I don't care if you let him play with your butt, then act like you don't remember." And this sparked a whole back and forth. First, you had Mano respond. He also actually sat down with Angela Yee to explain that if it's smoke, it's smoke. He's not running from it, but he denied the rumors that they owed the $250,000 to the podcast studio. Or he kind of just said like he didn't know anything about that, right? Like, it was kind of up in the air here, really, with this response.
It looks like 50 Cent has taken shots at the Let's Rap About It crew.
Smoke. It's very smoky.
Now, 50 posted this.
Documentary is a big thing. Like, you don't want nobody doing a documentary about some like trying to just make your whole character look weak. Like, that's petty behavior.
I don't understand why that's like legal to do though.
Documentary is more like a mockumentary, shit like that.
Be,
do you think that it's wrong or not?
I'm not with it.
All right, now he posted that clip, and then he also posted, and I got to make sure I got to see like what's true and what's not true.
Call us squatters.
Yeah, he called you guys squatters and said you guys owe $250,000. So is that true?
I don't know nothing about that.
Okay, so you guys have paid your rent.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Okay. All right, now to put it in perspective, though, you said
What?
you weren't taking aim.
No, we not making our podcast not going. We don't talk about people. We take things and internalize it. We was talking about, it was a general conversation about do people have the actual right to make a documentary about you, and how would you feel if it was you? But I get where you're coming from. But at the same time, I'm not trying to walk nothing down. Like, if it's smoke, it's smoke.
All right, well, here is the full conversation of what you guys were talking about, because it was really just about legally, can you...
Right, that's what it was.
And then you started talking about sex tapes, because somehow it always comes back to that. Here's what happened.
Is it acceptable for someone to create a documentary about you without your approval? How would you feel if it happened to you?
It's like...
Definitely not acceptable. It's facetious and petty.
Right, it's like somebody putting out your sex tape.
Yeah, if you want to, yeah, exactly.
I don't know that that's funny. Comparable, because a sex tape,
you gotta make sure your
you
lighting
can't just put
is
that.
correct.
Yeah, but documentaries, people can do them, and they do them all
right, we know
the
that.
time.
Yeah,
so
we know that. But everybody panties is in a bunch. Oh my God,
it doesn't feel like this is a big.
No, it ain't nothing.
Yeah,
but the thing is,
the intention was not to come at him.
If you shooting and you saying they and these guys, and you got a picture and I'm in a picture, I'm shooting back, and it's with whoever. It's with whoever, whenever, however.
We know.
But once Mano said this, it was all out war, all right? 50 Cent went on Instagram and he made a caption saying, I didn't have this on my list of things to do, but if you insist, I'll make time. I'm working on buying the space where you record your podcast, and 50% of your podcast, I'm going to buy it out. You know I don't cap. So this was back in December, you guys. In December, 50 Cent is making threats of buying 50% of their podcast, and remember that number, 50%. And he's working on buying the space that they record in, which obviously he also claims they owe $250,000 to. Now, at the time, people were kind of confused because, A, how would 50 Cent have this information, right? That he could buy 50% of the podcast? How did he know that they owed all this money? How did 50 know basically that 50% of this podcast was up for sale? Especially when Jim Jones had been making it seem like he actually owned the building that they were recording the podcast in, and that he was renting out other units to sell to other podcasters to record their podcasts in. Like, he was filming in there talking about how he's making renovations to this building. You can't do that unless you own the thing, right? So after this, the Let's Rap About It crew, they would go on and drop a little diss track of their own aimed at 50 Cent. Squatters freestyle, Fabulous killed it, and he was taking the most shots, in my opinion, at 50. Specifically referencing the fact that their podcast and the building is not up for sale. He rapped, "You ain't talking about top dollar, do not holla. Guys can't move us, nah, we're not squatters. They're mad cause we're fly and people can't swat us. Those window shoppers ain't really gon' cop nada." Of course, a callback to 50's song Window Shoppers, and how he was literally window shopping this building and this podcast that they now are recording, right? He also had the most savage line rapping, "You know I got power, your shorties got hot showered." Now, that's obviously in reference to the fact that many people believe Jane Doe in the Diddy case was actually 50 Cent's baby mama, and that Jane Doe had described some insane things in the freak-offs with Diddy, right? Now, to pause on the whole 50 situation. So, at this same period of time, Jim Jones gets on another podcast and starts talking about his old friend Cameron. Remember how back in the day they were all in Harlem as kids, Big L, Cameron, Mace, etc. So on the No Rap Cap podcast, Jim Jones had actually said that Cameron was scared of Big L's brothers.
Dame Impact in Harlem was nothing. Not to say it like that. Dame came up under hustlers that Impact was it. He was a little dude when it came to hustling in Harlem. He wasn't not no Rich Porter, none of that type of. He wanted to hustle. He wanted to hustle for niggas like Rich Porter and shit like that. Dame from the East Side. And the East Side is different from the West Side. Now for the East Side, Dame was a big deal to us because we were little. When he was coming from the West Side, little car, jewelry, and all that. So when you're young, he's looking like Rich Porter, but in reality, you know, he was like, just go to the store, take a couple grams, get out of here.
The Rap Cap Podcast. When he canceled out the street side of it and go into the music business of it, what was his impact with Dipset at that time?
He didn't have no impact with Dipset. Dipset, we made our impact on our own.
When y'all came over to Rockefeller, did y'all bring a certain energy that kind of ruffled the feathers of like state property and people like that?
No, when we came over to Rockefeller, it was all love.
everybody in the studios doing music, State Property, Left Bleak and them, Diplomats. Everybody was doing music there. That shit ain't started until they went through all that damn shit.
The Duel say Cam took over the rock, huh?
I mean, Mace was talented. He was a dancer. And Mace didn't excel at the rapping really to after high school they started getting on and shit like that, and then he excelled and then started getting on first and signed first, and then now help Cam and everybody get on and shit like that. But as far as making a name for themselves in the street, nobody had no name in the street like that. You know what I mean?
Big L.
Big L had a name for himself. He was rapping early. He was signed early. He had some dangerous ass brothers. They was uptown, really shaking and moving and shit like that. You dig? And that's not my part of town. I was uptown. You dig? Yeah, Cam used to be scared to death of them niggas to the point he didn't want to come outside. I didn't understand it because I'm from downtown. You heard? We had our own set of killers.
So here you have Jim Jones trying to, kind of rewrite like really important history. So Cameron responded on Instagram with a post saying, "How you worried about me when your heat off and your rent's due?" Captioning the post saying, "I heard it was 7 degrees in the Bronx last night." So he's implying here that Jim Jones owes rent to the podcast studio and the heat was turned off in that studio. Jim comments on the post saying, "Do your shoot, punk," and Cameron replies, "What's wrong, Capo? Your heat's off too? I didn't know. I'd hate for you to be 50 years old with no heat. What's your Zell, bro? I got you." Jomo claps back saying that Cameron's soft, and Cameron says, "Yes, but my heat's on and I'm warm. You're 50 years old, tough and cold. Is your heat off for real?" Notice Jim Jones is not denying that ever here, right? Instead, he continues replying, calling Cameron soft, and Cameron again says, "Jomo, you're 50 and you still want to pull up. I got the video of you breaking in your own studio trying to trigger the heat system and chasing your landlord around in his car because he wanted his rent. You're 50. Go pull up on that heat bill." All right, so this is where 50 Cent pulls back up into the picture with a post of his own saying, "Damn, I hope you can all chip in and get the heat back on." And we would come to find out that, Cameron saying that the heat was off and Jim Jones was chasing the landlord around because he wanted the rent. Yeah, well, apparently this landlord actually was the one who owned 50% of the podcast and the studio that they're recording in. And 50 Cent ends up kind of confirming this because first he posts a caption saying, "So Jim Jones wired over the $200K that he owed the podcast studio. Okay, cool. He may turn out to be a good tenant after all. Samuel, if you need me to make them pay, just give me a ring. I'm here." Now, he's implying that Samuel is the landlord of this building, right? And then he goes on to actually release an alleged phone call from this Samuel landlord guy where he's saying that Jim Jones had promised him 50% of the profits that the podcast makes in exchange for renting out the building, right? And that's where this $250K number had actually come from. And keep all this in mind because it only gets crazier.
I want to rent it. And I said, okay, fine, right? He's been saying this for since October. And he keeps trying to build it, but he won't sign the lease. He's like, "I don't like these terms. I want 6 months of build out." And ridiculous bullshit. We also have a partnership agreement where half of what he's building now, his media, belongs to us. But he won't tell us how much he's making and doing all these things. So half of the content he's creating, if you want to buy that too, I'll sell you half the company. He's not a business. He's insane. To me, it's worth very little to nothing. But if it works out for you, I just throw that in as a sweetener. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is he signed a lease with me. Right now he owes, I'm going to say it in a short way, at least $80,000, if not $180,000. The monthly rent on the old lease.
Now, of course, Mano would do an interview with TMZ where he would deny that, 50 Cent is buying anything because Mano is part owner of the podcast and he's not, approving any acquisitions or purchases or nothing like that.
50's been saying, he's coming for everybody. Everybody has jokes. He's coming for everyone.
Right.
And he said that he wants to buy into your podcast. Take us through that.
Well,
and, I'm assuming, that must have been kind of good press for you.
Well, I'm going to say this, man. Beefing with 50 is good business. Numbers is up, podcast is up, engagement is up. Beefing with 50, I wish I would have known this a long time ago. We could go a couple more rounds.
No way.
100%. Yeah.
Were you surprised to see that, or?
I mean, because it wasn't something that I was normally practicing. You understand what I'm saying? It wasn't about, having an issue with anybody. But since we got a podcast, let's rap about it. It's good for business. But he said he wanted to buy half the podcast. Now I'm saying if you want to buy half the podcast, I'm the person you need to see about that. I'm the guy you got to see about that.
I mean, do you think he was being like facetious or was
he say he don't cap? He say he don't cap, so I should be receiving a phone call, right, saying, yo, what's up with this podcast? Because I'm the guy. If you want to buy half the podcast, I mean, listen, I'm the guy.
Right. I mean, we just saw Joe and Jada. We just saw Breakfast Club on Netflix.
What did I just tell you? Beefing with 50, beefing with Curtis is good business.
Oh my goodness. I mean,
that's it.
Well, what do you think is next for you guys? Do you plan on having like an actual sit down with him? Possibly.
I'm not planning nothing in that area. I'm just going by based off of what was said.
Correct.
All right. So if we going by what is said, and the brothers is not capping, I'm saying okay. If you can't buy it from nobody else but over here. So if you saying you making these bold statements, then my phone should be ringing.
But now, even though Mano would deny that, 50 Cent had any chance of actually buying the studio, it was obvious that there was a mole in this studio that was feeding 50 Cent information between the landlord calls and then what comes next. It gets bad, you guys, all right? So 50 Cent would post a video of them recording in the studio and the lights would suddenly cut off and they were all just kind of struggling to understand what the hell was going on.
Excuse me. Do we need an electrician or do we just call Con Ed and they come out and we turn everything on?
Now, this was just more of like a warning or a message like, hey, like I have eyes and ears everywhere where you are. You think I can't get close to you? I can't buy your podcast? Just try me. And he captioned this post tagging Cameron saying, Cameron, turn the lights off. These bum guys in there with flashlights. But now here's where it gets kind of weird, all right? So from Jim's side of things, he starts actually showing that the whole studio is under renovation, right? Again, he was kind of trying to make it seem like either maybe he had ownership in it or at least like he's kind of overseeing the building and how they're renovating it and everything. And it makes sense that if a building's under construction, then, the heat might go out, the lights might go out. It's normal, but at the same time, how does 50 Cent have access to all this information, right? And the landlord giving him phone calls. So both sides are kind of weird.
So saying since the cat's out the bag, might as well show you all the process and we could do it together. Told you I was in second phase of construction. This is another side of the building, actually. This is where we're actually building the gym at. All my gym enthusiasts pull up. Right now, they just sheet rocking. What's up with you? You good? Hello, okay. You heard? We working. Sheety and things like that. Maybe a few weeks, the gym will be up and running. I'm excited. Start to shoot my fitness shows. Get everybody in shape. Got some plans for it. But yeah, we're gonna start to just go through the whole process, let y'all see the building from the raw space to what we actually gonna build. Fuck it, the cat's out the bag, well, let's show them better than we can tell. First day of my new job, Noah had to build it, I'm gonna build mine too, you heard? I was joking, y'all thought I was playing games about this construction we building right now. We're building a platform for this beautiful LED wall that we have inside of the sound stage, you heard? Hey, sometimes you gotta get your hands dirty yourself. We're working on it. I'm Noah, nigga. You heard? We're building an ark. We building our own ark out this motherfucker. Oh, shit. Oh, don't stop, Splash. So what we're doing here is I'm building a platform, or we're building a platform for this big-ass LED wall. We're working on the sound stage, you heard? We almost finished. Watch me work.
But then it's like, what the hell is going on? 50 Cent ends up posting another video of security camera footage of Jim Jones outside of the building looking absolutely frigid, freezing, like he hasn't felt a heater in a decade. And he captions it saying, it's 10 degrees below zero in New York. Old boys kicking down the door trying to get some heat.
Those 3 Big Macs are for me.
Now, I'll be honest though, Jim Jones is doing a great job at kind of responding to these trolls, right? Like, he wanted to make Iceman merch of himself, standing outside the building looking freezing. And then he even goes on to make fun of the fact that there were no lights on, putting a bunch of candles around him and documenting further how he was overseeing a lot of the construction of the building, and even said he had plans to turn it into like some sort of space for multi-purpose content, right? So really making it seem like he does have ownership in this building.
Can you see me? Yeah.
Since I'm starting the year off at the top of your Explorer, are you not entertained? Since everybody want to put my business in the street, I might as well talk to you about my business. Right now, I am in the second phase of construction. We're not open to public. This is a raw space. I have not found out yet what I want to do exactly in this space, but in my mind, I was thinking of building like a little mart, but we'll see how that goes. Pull up though. Show you what we'll be doing. I'm building a multi-purpose content creation facility for media, fashion, music, and broadcast.
So while Jim Jones was playing into the joke, everything kind of seemed all good, right? People were even questioning, like, maybe 50 Cent was kind of in on this and just promoting their podcast by concocting this fake beef with them. Things would get a little weird about a month later, which was really just a couple days ago by the time of this recording. See, remember, 50 Cent's making jokes about buying the building, and then all of a sudden he starts posting like real security camera footage and people in the building recording these compromised videos of Jim Jones, losing power, being freezing outside, all this stuff. Well, it gets worse, all right? He posts on his Instagram, 50 Cent, from February 19th, a security cam footage video of Jim Jones being so freezing in this building that he attempts to go into a room where they control the heat and he can't get in. So he literally tries kicking the door down, guys.
He cut the lights off. You're not supposed to, you heard Jim? Huh? He cut the lights off. What's up? What happened? Yeah, I'm good. No, it's mine. It's my property. All right? You got a problem with somebody.
Sorry, I messed up. It wasn't the heat, it was the lights. You could hear them in the video struggling because they cut the lights off in the building. Remember, 50 Cent had already posted an earlier video like 2 months ago of them, all of a sudden lights shut off as they're recording a podcast, right? And now you see the security camera footage of Jim Jones trying to kick the door down to turn back on the lights when they got turned off, and someone's in the background yelling, yo, they cut the lights off. So at this point, I don't think it's a gimmick or a game, right? Like, the guy is literally kicking down the door of this building that he's claiming he's renovating and building up because the lights are not on. If he really had some involvement with the ownership, don't you think he would not have to kick down the door to try and turn back on the lights? But if you're still in doubt, it gets worse, okay? 50 Cent posts the eviction notice. Huh? Yes, as you can see, it says the tenant was served a 15-day notice of default dated January 5th, 2026. So this was already at the beginning of this year. And it's directed directly at Jim Jones, Joseph Jones. And it says that tenant's tenancy at the premises has been terminated. He's gone. He's out of there. And if you guys couldn't imagine it got any worse, well, it did. So remember that 50 Cent was talking about a guy named Samuel in around like the holiday season, right? He was claiming these guys, they owed $250,000 to the landlord of the building of their podcast. He then leaks an alleged phone call of this Samuel landlord guy saying that their agreement while this building was getting built out was that in order to kind of compensate on the rent or whatever the case is, the landlord would also get 50% of the profits of the podcast, and that they didn't pay it and they owed hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, yeah, well, it looks like 50 Cent was not capping about that because he posted a picture with who is allegedly Samuel onto his Instagram with the caption saying, Sam is my partner. I own the joint. Now you're going to fix every door you kick or I'm going to kick your butt, Jimmy. By Monday, you're destroying my property. And it's crazy because in that phone call I played you guys, the Samuel guy is offering the profits of the podcast to 50 Cent, saying that like, hey, I'm the landlord and they promised me profits from their podcast, but they're hiding the money that they actually make from the podcast, but they owe me money for renting out my studio. So it's like, I'll toss in their podcast profits at a low rate because it's worth nothing to me because they're hiding the profits. You could buy this building if you want. Like, they're giving me hell. I want to get rid of them. And it looks like 50 Cent, he's implying that he literally bought this building. And it's crazy because if you think there's no way 50 Cent actually bought the building, he then goes on to post a bunch of different multi-angles of Jim Jones kicking down the freaking doors in this building. Like, he has him surveyed on every single angle. This is worse than Diddy with the freak off tapes. Now, Jim Jones thought it was funny to keep trolling this whole thing by, you know, recreating the kicking scene, showing that he's really good at kicking. But it's like, at this point, how many jokes can you make when it seems like 50 Cent is at the bare minimum inches away from actually buying this building? And Jim would also create more confusion by posting a video of himself pulling back up into the studio with the caption saying, "The IFC factory opening soon, a multi-purpose content creation facility for music, fashion, and broadcast for artists from all walks of life. Come be creative in a creative safe haven built from and for our community. Membership programs will be available. Everyone thought Noah was drunk and crazy till the rain came." So at this point, you know, is 50 line, is Jim Jones line? Who knows? But the fact that all of this can kind of be aired out on the internet for everyone to see, you kicking down the doors of the very same building that you claim to own and claim to be building up into some podcast studio, it's absolutely crazy. And it just speaks to a larger issue in terms of how did a guy who had, you know, a Billboard Top 5 hit, was everywhere, influenced a whole generation with his movement, spent allegedly $20 million of all the money he made, but is now at a point where he needed to venture off into podcasting, but his podcast may not even be making enough money to cover the rent of the studio that they're recording the thing inside of. Crazy questions to ask, crazy situations to be in, but let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.